Lucas grew up in a New York orphanage, where the silence of the nights was broken only by the solitary notes of his old guitar. Every chord he played carried a question: who were his parents, and why was he left behind? One night, Lucas finds a clue, a name, Rose Knight, and the word music. That was all he needed to set his life in motion. With his guitar slung across his back and a heart full of dreams, he sets off in search of answers. In the vastness of the city, music leads him to unexpected places and to people who share his pain. Will he finally find the one waiting for him at the end of this melody? Lucas stood by the dusty window of the old orphanage in Queens, his gaze fixed on the bright lights of New York City. The stars in the sky seemed distant, but the city lights always fascinated him. On nights like this, he wondered if his parents might be somewhere out there in that vastness. At only 13, his desire to know where he came from and who his parents were made him feel older, as if his soul carried an invisible weight. The one thing that gave him some comfort was an old, cracked guitar he'd found months ago in the orphanage basement, which had since become his closest friend. Every night, Lucas would sneak down to the basement to play simple chords. He wasn't sure how he'd learn to play. It was as if the music was already inside him. He strummed the strings until his fingers ached, and though he had no one to guide him, he felt a unique connection to the sounds he created. He closed his eyes and imagined that his notes reached the outside world, that perhaps they even found their way to his parents, wherever they might be. On this particular night, he was overcome with a sense of urgency, a need to discover who he really was. Curious and eager, Lucas decided to dig through some old documents at the orphanage. His trembling hands sifted through yellowed papers until he found a name, Rose Knight. His heart beat faster as he read those letters. That name, somehow, seemed significant. Lucas wasn't entirely sure why, but deep down, he felt that this was his mother's name. And next to that name, only one word stood out: music. It was as if the universe had given him a piece of the puzzle, and he was ready to follow any clue he could find. Lucas spent the rest of the night wide awake, lying in his bed in the silent dormitory, his gaze lost in the shadows on the ceiling. "Mom, do you love music too?" he whispered to himself, holding his guitar close. Each melody he imagined seemed infused with a silent message. To him, music was the only link between himself and the past he was searching for. Determined, Lucas made up his mind. He knew he couldn't spend the rest of his life there in the orphanage without answers. His conviction that music was his bridge to his parents gave him the courage to dream of a future outside its walls. As the sun finally began to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Lucas knew his life was about to change forever. He would set off in search of answers, no matter where they took him. With his old guitar slung over his shoulder and a heart full of hope, he knew he would face challenges he had never imagined. But the strength of music pulsed within him, and Lucas was ready to follow it wherever it would lead. With the first light of dawn illuminating his path, Lucas left the orphanage with a light backpack, a heart full of dreams, and his old guitar strapped across his back. The early morning streets of New York, already bustling with life, seemed to watch him with a mix of indifference and mystery. He barely knew where to start his search, but he carried an unshakable faith that music would guide him. The sound of hurried footsteps and the echo of car horns gave him a sense of freedom he had never felt before, as if the world was finally within his reach. With little money in his pocket, Lucas knew he'd have to make do with the small amount he'd saved over the years. He found a busy square and decided to start there. He sat on a bench, and with slightly trembling fingers, began strumming a soft melody. The notes were slow and somber, carrying a sense of longing, as if each one told a piece of his story. In a short time, a few people stopped, drawn to the distant look in the boy's eyes and the depth in his sound. A man tossed a coin his way, followed by another person, and soon Lucas realized that maybe his talent could take him further than he'd imagined. As he played, Lucas's thoughts wandered. He remembered the file with the name Rose Knight and the word music next to it. Who was she? How could he find her? These questions spun in his mind, and he knew that with each note, he was sending a message out to the universe. Somehow, he believed that the sound of the strings could reach the heart of the person he was searching for. As the day went on and he continued playing, he felt his soul connecting with something larger, a blend of love and hope. Toward the end of the afternoon, an older woman approached and listened to Lucas for a few minutes. Her eyes showed a motherly curiosity, as if she saw something beyond the boy's frail and weary appearance. She introduced herself as Sarah and asked what had brought him to the square. With the honesty of someone with nothing left to lose, Lucas told her about his search for his parents and how he believed that music was the bond that would unite them. Sarah was moved and offered him dinner at a nearby restaurant, insisting he needed a decent meal to continue his journey. After dinner, Sarah gave him more than just food. She handed him a piece of paper with the address of a small music studio in Brooklyn, suggesting he might find help for his talent there and, perhaps, some information to guide him in his search. Lucas held the paper between his fingers with gratitude. He didn't know what lay ahead, but he felt that each encounter, each person he met, was bringing him closer to the answers he sought. The next day, with the studio address tucked away like a small treasure, Lucas headed to Brooklyn. The neighborhood was entirely different from what he was used to, with cobblestone streets, small local shops, and a quietness that contrasted with New York's constant noise. When he reached the studio, a simple building with worn doors and a modest sign, Lucas's heart was racing. He wondered what he would find there and whether anyone could really help a lost boy searching for an unknown past. Inside, he was greeted by the muffled sound of a guitar in the distance and a tall man with gray hair and a kind face. He introduced himself as Mike, the studio's owner. Seeing the guitar on Lucas's back and the hopeful look in his eyes, Mike smiled knowingly. "I can see you have a story to tell," he said, his voice calm and welcoming. Lucas didn't hesitate and told him about his search for his parents and his belief that music would be his path to find them. The man listened in silence, his face showing empathy and deep understanding. When Lucas finished, Mike led him to a small recording room with a microphone and a chair under a soft light. "I want to hear what you have to say, but through your music," he said, encouraging Lucas to play whatever his heart wanted to express. Sitting there with the guitar in his lap, Lucas closed his eyes and let his hands move freely across the strings. The melody that came out was deep, filled with feelings he couldn't put into words. It was a call, a silent plea, hoping to echo out into the unknown. When the music stopped, the silence in the room was heavy with emotion. Mike was moved, touched by the rawness and pain he heard in Lucas's notes. "That song has a story, kid. And I'm going to help you share it," he promised, with a conviction that surprised Lucas. Mike committed to recording his songs and suggested a small show at a local cafe where Lucas could perform for a larger audience. The idea stirred a mix of excitement and fear in the boy, but he knew he needed to seize this chance to get closer to the truth he was looking for. In the days that followed, Lucas spent hours in the studio, practicing and recording. During breaks, he and Mike exchanged stories, and the older man began to treat him almost like a son. Every conversation, every recorded note, filled Lucas with renewed hope, a sense that he was truly on the right path. With Mike's support, he felt stronger to face whatever he might find at the end of his journey, and more confident that somehow, music would lead him to the answers he had longed for. The day of Lucas's first performance finally arrived, and he was both anxious and almost in shock. He had never played for a real audience before and could barely contain his nerves. Mike took him to a cozy cafe, known for giving young talent a stage. The place had a warm, inviting atmosphere, with walls covered in photographs of famous musicians and vintage concert posters. The soft lights and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee brought Lucas a small sense of calm, and he took a deep breath, readying himself for the moment. When the time came, Lucas stepped onto the small stage, sitting beneath a light that illuminated only him and his guitar. He felt every gaze fixed on him, but as he closed his eyes, he allowed himself to forget the audience and focus solely on the music. The first notes were shaky, but soon they grew steady, and Lucas played with his heart wide open, every melody an extension of his feelings, his search, and the longing he held for his parents. The music seemed to take on a life of its own, flowing like a river of emotions, carrying both the pain and the hope that he would one day find them. As he played, the audience was enveloped in a quiet, intense atmosphere, as if each person there became part of the quest Lucas expressed through his music. Some exchanged glances, moved by the depth of the song. In the front row, a young woman wiped away a tear, and an elderly couple held hands, deeply touched by the boy's music that conveyed such strength, even though he stood alone. With each chord, Lucas seemed to reach into the hearts of the listeners, who silently shared in his dream. When the final note echoed into the air, the silence was broken by a round of applause. Lucas opened his eyes and looked at the audience, still dazed by the intensity of the moment. From the back, Mike waved with a proud smile, and Lucas felt a wave of relief and gratitude wash over him. He moved closer to the microphone, feeling insecure but driven by an irresistible urge to speak. "I'm here searching for my parents," he said, his voice slightly trembling. "Music is the only clue I have, and somehow, I believe it will lead me to them." His words, filled with sincerity, touched the audience even more. After the performance, several people approached him, offering words of support and encouragement. Some, moved, left contacts and promises to help. Among them, a kindly woman with gentle eyes mentioned that she had once known a woman named Rose who also shared a deep love for music. Lucas felt a new spark of hope. Each person and each story felt like another piece of the puzzle, and although he hadn't found answers yet, he felt closer than ever to the truth he sought. After the emotional performance at the cafe, Lucas returned to the studio with a newfound light in his eyes. His music, which had once been only a cry for answers, was now also a way to connect with those around him. Each recording session felt like he was calling out to his parents, sending a message to the universe. Rose was a name that kept echoing in his mind, and Lucas couldn't shake the idea that this could be his mother's name. Determined to follow this lead, he began searching through various records, even knowing that he might end up at a series of dead ends. Seeing Lucas's determination, Mike suggested he record a more personal song, one that told his own story and could reach anyone who might hear it. Together, they wrote a song that spoke of lost love, longing, and reunion. As he recorded it, Lucas felt as though the melody was a direct reflection of his deepest emotions. The music carried the weight of silent tears and of every dream that had kept him going when everything seemed lost. For him, each note was like a message to his parents, wherever they were. An autumn afternoon brought an unexpected surprise. The woman Lucas had met at the cafe reappeared at the studio. She handed him an old, worn notebook filled with lyrics and melodies. "This notebook belonged to Rose," she said, her gaze full of compassion. "She always believed that music was the strongest bond between people. I hope it helps you understand more about who you are." Lucas held the notebook in silence, gripping it as though it were a treasure he would never part with. Inside those pages, he felt a piece of his past waiting to be uncovered. He spent the entire night immersed in the yellowed, faded pages, reading handwritten lyrics and notes that felt strangely familiar, almost as if they were his own. He felt an indescribable connection to the words, as though each verse and melody held a part of himself he had yet to discover. For the first time, Lucas was sure he was close to something that truly mattered, something that could bring meaning to all his years of searching. With his heart pounding with anticipation and hope, he knew he would follow any lead the notebook offered. Resolved, Lucas prepared himself for the next step. He knew there was still a long road ahead, but now he carried a new certainty. This notebook was more than just an object, it was a gift from the past, a bridge to the future, and a promise that, no matter how distant it seemed, the truth was within reach. He set out the next day feeling stronger, better prepared, and, above all, more connected to the mother he believed was still watching over him somewhere in the world. Rose's notebook became an endless source of inspiration and solace for Lucas. He resumed playing on the streets and at small shows organized by Mike, feeling more determined than ever to follow every lead the notebook suggested. During one of these performances, he noticed a middle-aged woman at the back of the bar. She watched him intently, as if trying to decipher something hidden in each note he played. At the end of the show, she approached him, her expression a mixture of surprise and emotion. "I knew Rose," she said, her voice catching. "She was a dear friend and an incredibly talented woman. Your music, it's so much like hers. Where did you know her from?" Lucas's heart raced. He explained his search, each word tinged with hope and apprehension. The woman, who introduced herself as Grace, was moved by Lucas's story and promised to share everything she knew about Rose. She recalled Rose's free-spirited nature, her dreams, and how her life had changed dramatically after making a difficult decision. In the days that followed, Grace became a regular presence at the studio. She and Lucas spent hours revisiting memories and stories about Rose. Each new detail brought the image of his mother into sharper focus. Lucas felt closer to her than ever before, and with the support of Grace and Mike, he began to gather strength to investigate more about Rose, ready to follow any lead, no matter how faint. Each day was a new discovery that brought him closer to a reality he could only have dreamed of. One quiet night, as Lucas leafed through the notebook again, he found a song titled "My Home." The title seemed familiar, as though rooted deep within his soul. As he strummed the melody, silent tears traced his face. That tune seemed to encapsulate his journey and the unconditional love he yearned to find. He knew then that he had to pursue this path, to play this song for the world, hoping that somewhere, somehow, Rose might hear it. With this decision, Lucas found a new sense of resolve. He felt each piece was slowly coming together, and though he didn't know what lay ahead, he was ready for any challenge. He knew that his mother remained a mystery to be unraveled, but with Grace's support and Mike's guidance, he was prepared to face the future with courage and confidence. With his performances gaining traction, Lucas began to attract the attention of people intrigued by his talent and the story he shared through his music. During a cafe performance, a music producer approached him, captivated by the authenticity of his performance, and offered him a unique opportunity, a chance to play at a major music festival in Manhattan. This would be a stage where he could share his story with a larger audience, and perhaps even connect with someone who could provide new answers. Accepting the invitation, Lucas threw himself into preparations with Mike. They rehearsed intensely, and each day, Lucas felt more confident and ready. This festival was more than a career milestone, it was a chance to amplify his message and possibly find someone who connected him to Rose. Determined to make the most of this opportunity, he felt closer to his mother with every new song he prepared. When the festival day arrived, Lucas felt a mix of anxiety and exhilaration. He took to the stage with his guitar, under the starry Manhattan sky, surrounded by the vibrant energy of the crowd. He began to play "My Home," the song he had found in Rose's notebook. As the notes resonated, the emotion in his voice captivated the audience, and every chord seemed to bring him closer to his mother. The music flowed with overwhelming power, as if Rose's spirit was present in that moment. At the end of the performance, the audience rose to their feet, moved by the intensity of Lucas's music. Among the applause and emotional gazes, he felt a profound sense of accomplishment and hope. He felt strengthened and connected to Rose as never before. As he left the stage, he stepped back to the microphone and, with a racing heart, shared his story. "I'm searching for my mother, Rose Knight. This song is my way of calling out to her, wherever she may be." The audience responded with respectful silence, followed by heartfelt applause. Many people came to greet him after the show, offering messages of support and promises of help. Among them, a kindly-faced woman told Lucas that she had once known a young woman named Rose, someone deeply passionate about music. Her words rekindled Lucas's hope, and feeling more connected to his quest, he realized that music was leading him closer and closer to the truth he sought. In the days following the festival, Lucas was flooded with messages of support and encouragement. Among them, one letter caught his attention. A woman named Sarah claimed to know a story that could be related to his mother. With his heart racing, Lucas arranged to meet Sarah in a downtown cafe, eager to hear what she had to say. Sarah shared details about Rose, confirming that she had been a talented musician and a woman with an indomitable spirit. Rose had a light of her own, but there was also a sadness in her eyes, Sarah said, her voice laced with nostalgia. She mentioned that Rose had once spoken of a child she had to leave behind, though she never stopped loving him. Sarah also revealed that Rose believed music was the bond between her and her son, the bridge that would eventually bring them back together. As he listened, Lucas felt the pieces of his story finally coming together. Sarah continued, recounting moments when Rose seemed overwhelmed with sorrow but full of love and hope. Each word brought Lucas closer to understanding his mother's story, and he knew that, wherever Rose was, she had never stopped loving the son she was forced to leave. At the end of their conversation, Sarah handed him a small guitar-shaped pendant, explaining that it was a gift from Rose. With tears in his eyes, Lucas clutched the pendant tightly. That small piece of metal held enormous significance, and he knew that, from that moment on, he would never truly be alone. He left the cafe with a renewed determination to continue his search, feeling that Rose's love would accompany him every step of the way. After meeting with Sarah, Lucas couldn't shake the stories of Rose from his mind. Each detail made him feel closer to her, yet it also stirred a deep unease. Days later, he received an unexpected letter, postmarked from a distant town and bearing a cryptic message, "Go to where it all began." Feeling a mix of trepidation and curiosity, Lucas decided to investigate, knowing this clue might lead him to an important revelation. The journey took him to an old house in a quiet, unassuming neighborhood. When he arrived, an elderly woman opened the door as though she had been expecting him. "You must be Lucas," she said, with a bittersweet smile. She introduced herself as Lydia, a longtime friend of Rose, and invited him inside. The house's interior was modest and welcoming, with old photographs and sheet music on the walls. Lydia led him to a room that seemed untouched by time and began to tell him about Rose and the painful choice she had made. Lydia revealed that Rose had been forced to make a difficult decision, one that deeply marked her life. She was a young mother who, in a desperate bid to protect her son, had to leave him behind, even though it broke her heart. Each word from Lydia weighed heavily on Lucas, who struggled to understand his mother's sacrifice. Learning that Rose had loved him and that her decision to leave him was an act of protection brought him both relief and sorrow. He felt torn between love and grief but knew he had to move forward. Lydia noticed the conflict in Lucas and offered comfort. "Your mother loved you more than anything, and I believe she always wanted you to know that," she said, handing him a small photo album. As he flipped through the aged pages, Lucas saw Rose's face for the first time, and tears streamed down his face. Not only had he learned more about his mother, but he also felt forgiveness beginning to take root in his heart. That moment brought Lucas a new perspective. He knew that although the answers he had found were painful, they were also freeing. His mother had never stopped loving him, she had simply made the only choice she thought possible to protect him. With that certainty, Lucas was ready to embrace his past and honor the love that Rose had held for him. The revelations about Rose brought Lucas a fleeting sense of peace but also stirred new questions about what he was truly seeking. Every time he played a new song, the notes seemed heavy with complex emotions, pain, forgiveness, and the need to move forward. Mike noticed the weight on Lucas's face and suggested a break, but Lucas insisted he needed to keep going. Music was his way of processing everything he had discovered. It was during this time of turmoil that he met Ella, a visual artist with a gentle smile and bright eyes who had been in the audience during one of his performances. After the show, Ella approached him, and in a conversation that stretched through the night, they shared life stories and tales of loss. She revealed how Lucas's music had touched her heart. Her empathy was an unexpected relief for Lucas, and he began to see Ella as a kindred spirit, someone who seemed to understand his pain without judgment. Lucas's friendship with Ella quickly deepened into something more profound. She encouraged him to look ahead and create new music, to find beauty in his struggles, and to embrace the scars he carried. With her, Lucas discovered a renewed purpose. Together, they decided to work on a project that would merge music and visual art, an exhibition where Ella's paintings would complement Lucas's songs, creating a sensory and emotional experience for the audience. During the preparations, Lucas felt his soul healing, as though the hardships of his past were transforming into a new beginning. Ella's presence and love for music helped him realize that his journey was no longer just about finding his mother, it was also about discovering who he truly was. For the first time, he allowed himself to believe he deserved love, that he had a right to happiness, and that Rose's legacy could live within him without being a burden. In this way, Lucas found a new source of inspiration in his friendship and love for Ella, the strength he needed to face the future with an open heart and a peaceful soul. A few weeks after growing closer to Ella, Lucas received another mysterious letter, this time with a postmark from a distant city. Its contents brought an overwhelming rush of emotion. "Lucas, if you are reading this, then my music has finally reached you." It was a letter from Rose, written many years earlier but carefully saved by Lydia, waiting for the right moment to be delivered. In the letter, Rose expressed her deep feelings of love and loss, which had accompanied her since she was forced to leave her son. She wrote with both longing and affection, revealing that she thought about how it would be to watch him grow every single day. She described music as her refuge and her hope, and she held on to the dream of one day reuniting with him. Rose mentioned how she played for him, even from afar, believing that somehow he would hear her through the music. Lucas read each word with his heart racing, as if his mother were right there beside him. He felt the pain and love she carried, understanding that leaving him had been the hardest decision of her life. Holding the letter in his hands, with tears in his eyes, Lucas felt forgiveness flowing through him. Rose had never forgotten him, had never stopped loving him. Her absence now became an eternal presence, confirming that music truly was the bond between them. With Ella's support, comforting him and encouraging him to embrace this new chapter, Lucas decided that the best way to honor Rose's memory was to continue the journey she had started. He was finally at peace and felt that his music could touch not only his mother's heart but also the hearts of many others. After receiving Rose's letter, Lucas felt that his journey had taken on a new meaning. He decided to channel his entire story and emotions into a music project that would honor the love she had for him and her belief in the power of music. With support from Mike and Ella, he began recording an album titled Rose's Legacy, which gathered songs that captured every step of his journey, from the pain of abandonment to the relief of reunion. During the recording sessions, Lucas delved deep into his memories and emotions, and his music evolved, reflecting the growth his journey had given him. Every chord carried the nuances of his story and Rose's lesson about the strength and beauty of unconditional love. With Ella by his side, sharing every moment, Lucas felt inspired and hopeful that his music could touch other lives and encourage people to face their own challenges. News of the album spread, sparking curiosity about the young musician with such a moving story. For the album's release, Lucas organized a special performance where he would play his most personal songs for an audience eager to hear them. At the end of the performance, he played "My Home," the song that symbolized his reconciliation with Rose and his acceptance of the past. As the notes filled the air, the audience fell silent, captivated by the depth of his story. With tears in his eyes, Lucas finished the song and addressed the crowd. "This is my story, and it's also Rose's story. I hope it inspires you all to never give up on those you love." His words moved everyone, and he received a standing ovation. Among the crowd, Ella beamed with pride, admiring Lucas's strength and generous heart. That album became a landmark in his life, a symbol of healing and a lasting tribute to Rose's love. Lucas knew that wherever she was, his mother was at peace, listening to his melodies and smiling down on him. With the success of Rose's Legacy, Lucas's life changed significantly. He became recognized as a talented and heartfelt musician, and his story of resilience resonated with people across the country. Yet, more than fame, Lucas valued the impact of his songs and the support of people like Mike and Ella, who had always been there for him. Lucas and Ella began developing new projects together. Ella envisioned an exhibition combining her artwork with Lucas's music, a show where her paintings would visually interpret the songs from the album. The idea was to turn each song into a visual experience, capturing the essence of Lucas and Rose's story. With excitement, they worked tirelessly, blending their talents to create something truly unique. Over time, Lucas realized that Ella was an emotional anchor, someone who understood him and with whom he felt he could build a future. Being with her, he experienced what it was like to love and be loved in a pure way, feeling he had found another piece of himself. For the first time, he began to think about a future free from the weight of the past. On the day of the exhibition, the paintings and songs touched visitors deeply as they felt the connection between sound and image, immersing themselves in the narrative of love and redemption. The event was a success, and Lucas, deeply moved, thanked everyone who had supported him and given him strength. He looked at Ella with affection, knowing he was ready to embrace all that life had to offer. After the exhibition, Lucas felt a sense of inner peace he had never experienced before. It was as if, at last, his soul had been freed from the pain and shadows of the past. Every new song he composed was an expression of renewal and hope, reflecting the love and gratitude he felt for all he had lived through and achieved. He continued to perform at small shows and events, but now his music focused on themes of hope, fresh starts, and love. With each performance, Lucas felt that his story helped people connect with their own experiences of loss and forgiveness. On a quiet afternoon, while walking with Ella, he met a young man who shared how his songs had inspired him to reconcile with his estranged father. These encounters brought Lucas a sincere joy, as he understood that his role was not only to tell his story but also to help others find the courage to face their own pain and transform it. With Ella, he felt more complete than he had ever imagined he could. She was a partner in life and dreams, and he knew that, with her, he could move forward with peace in his heart. That night, under a starlit sky, Lucas and Ella made a vow to always support and inspire each other, wherever life might lead them. Lucas felt that he had been reborn and that the love he shared with Rose and now with Ella would be the foundation for a bright future. Ella's art exhibition, inspired by Lucas's songs, became a remarkable success, warmly received by everyone who attended. Each of her paintings represented one of the album's songs, displaying an emotional beauty that uniquely touched the audience. At the heart of the exhibit was a painting titled Rose's Smile, which captivated everyone's attention. The artwork portrayed Rose's smile in vibrant, lively colors, as if she were truly present, blessing everything Lucas had achieved. Lucas felt deeply moved seeing how Ella had captured the essence of his mother. This portrait was not only a tribute to Rose but also a confirmation that she had always been by his side, guiding and protecting him at every step of his journey. The exhibit made such an impact that people began sharing their own stories of overcoming hardship, and Lucas realized that his story had become a source of inspiration and healing. On the closing night, Lucas performed one last song, A New Dawn, dedicated to everyone who, like him, had sought and found forgiveness. The song was light, full of hope, and expressed the certainty that after darkness, a new morning would always follow. When he finished, the audience rose to their feet in applause, and Lucas looked over at Ella, feeling that he had finally found a home in her heart. There, beside Ella and surrounded by friends and people touched by his music, Lucas knew that Rose's memory would live on forever in every note and every smile his story inspired. At peace, he was ready to move forward, knowing that the legacy of love and music he built with his mother would never fade away. And so, Lucas's story closes with the certainty that the love and music he shared will continue to light up the world and inspire all those who find strength in hope and forgiveness. Years of searching brought Lucas something far beyond the answers he once sought, a home on every stage, friends who became family, and, at last, the reunion he had always longed for. As he stepped onto the stage for the final time that night, surrounded by cherished faces and Rose's memory, he knew his music had fulfilled its purpose. With the last chord of his song dedicated to Rose, an indescribable peace enveloped him. He realized that every note, every tear, and smile shared along the way formed a legacy that would echo forever. Now, Lucas was ready to move on, carrying with him the certainty that he would never be alone again. His mother lived on in every song, every melody, and would remain alive in his heart as long as his music resonated in the world. It was the end of his search, but only the beginning of a full life, guided by the same force that had brought him here, love. If Lucas's journey in search of family and connection through music moved you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for more stories like this one. Each narrative is an invitation to discover how love, resilience, and forgiveness can transform lives and open paths once unimaginable. Keep following and let yourself be inspired by stories of reunion, courage, and hope that remind us that even in the darkest moments, there's always a light to guide our way.